All right, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time that you are watching this video. I'm Richard Taylor, and I'm coming back with a story that I think deserves a little more attention. Now, this is a national story, but it hasn't been talked about a lot in the mainstream news media. And I'm talking about recently in the county of Hinds County, that's Mississippi, where the capital Jackson is. There has been over 250 bodies that has been discovered in unmarked graves behind the Hinds County uh, Detention Center. That's in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, out of these bodies, a lot of the deceased family members don't even know they were dead, don't even know they were buried here, had filed missing persons report, and had no knowledge of where their family members were. So the story first kind of came to light a few weeks ago when a lady, Miss Betterson Wade, had been looking for her 37-year-old son, Dexter Wade, who had disappeared mysteriously around May of last year in 2023. Miss Wade, she had filed a missing persons report with police in June, a month after his disappearance, and was calling several times to see if they had somehow located his body. Now, months later, around December, it was told to Mrs. Wade that her son's body had been buried in these unmarked graves. Now, the unmarked graves, as you see the picture, they're just mounds or hills with a metal rod and numbers stuck on a pole to number the bodies. So Miss Wade, the police told Miss Wade that they had been trying to get in contact with her when the body was first found. They didn't know who it was. So they buried him in this unmarked grave. But now, what's most disturbing about Mr. Wade's death and the subsequent police's handling of that death was Mr. Wade was hit by a police vehicle. Matter of fact, it was a undercover cop. He was hit by the vehicle and died. And this speaks to a cover-up. There's no way to explain this. They said that Mr. Dexter's body was, I guess, sent to the morgue, and they quote unquote was unable to identify it, but they found her son's wallet in his pocket with his ID and his mother's address on his person when he died. And so those claims of them trying to reach out to his mother and not knowing who the body was are completely false. They were trying to protect probably the off-duty officer who probably, may have been even intoxicated when he hit this man. But nevertheless, they buried this man's body, and it was only 5 or 6 months later that they found, quote unquote, found Miss Wade to tell him her son's body was in this grave. Now, what's once again disturbing is Miss Betterson Wade, had a son that was pulled over by the same Mississippi police only 4 years earlier, where he was thrown to the ground and succumbed to blunt force trauma injuries as well. So she had already had a lawsuit with this police department. So they knew exactly who she was and who her son was. So that once again speaks to the falsehood of these officials saying that they tried to contact Miss Wade. And so then when she went to have the body exhumed, she found that her son's body had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to the skull, ribs, and pelvis. His left leg was amputated, and his body was completely run over by the police. And the way they buried the body was they stuck him in a plastic bag and just threw him in a hole. And so the reason they did this was because after such a time, it would be impossible for them to rule the death as, an accidental death or, even a homicide in this case. There's no way to explain it other than a homicide that they buried this man. But without notifying the family, it would be impossible for them to contradict that statement of it being an accidental death. So this is the catalyst for them actually shining a light on those grave sites. Now they said since 2008, over 340 people have been buried in this pauper's grave, where authorities claim that either the people they found are not identifiable, or the people they found, they cannot find their relatives. So they bury them in this pauper's grave. Now, since 2008, over 240 people have been buried in this grave. And all total, 672 people have been buried in this grave. Now, also, they have kept a log. Now, the log is online. You can go look it up. There's a log of each individual person that has been buried in this pauper's grave, in this mass, I guess, German concentration camp type burial site since 2008. And then there are more families that are stepping forward. The family of 39-year-old Jonathan David Hankins learned that their loved ones have been buried in the same graveyard. The mother of Miss Hankins said she didn't know for a year and 7 months where her son was. It was like they threw him out like trash. Hankins, who is white, said her son was found dead in a Jackson hotel room May 23rd, 2022. She reported him missing in July, but she only learned what happened to his body this past December's when news reporters met with her and found, and told her the stories. Now, another family, Mario Moore, a black man, was found beaten to death in February of last year. He was wrapped in a tarp and left on the streets. Like others, his remains were buried at the same grave site a few months later. And his mother said once again they just got him and threw him in a hole, like he was nobody. So there's a practice in Jackson, Mississippi. Now it also speaks maybe to possible organ harvesting or organ stealing. It has been reported that there's a big market for organs, and especially those of black men and women, because of our DNA makeup. Organs, there's a big market for organs on the black market, and a lot of these times it has been reported when bodies go to the morgue, after they go to the coroner or the mortician, they find those bodies have been stuffed with newspapers and certain organs are missing. So we can't discount the fact that down in Mississippi, this may have been a common practice of when they find dead bodies, instead of notifying the family so they can have the proper autopsy and buried and embalmment done, they actually may be taking their organs and putting them in this grave so that no one will know. Now, Miss Wade has contacted the civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump to represent her, as many others families have been. But the police department, they said that there was no malice in them not notifying Miss Wade of her son's disappearance and of his subsequent death. But I don't know who listened to this video would uh, even begin to believe that story on why they didn't inform Miss Wade of her friend's death. Now, and a white guy, Mr. What is his name? Bob Avakian, in the speech, "We Need an Actual Revolution," said that the way this country has been built, and for the powers that be in this country, the humanity of black people has never counted for anything. Now, while the people buried in this pauper's grave of a diverse culture, the majority of these people in this grave have been identified as black or African American. Now, of course, we cannot forget the history of the state of Mississippi, whether it's Mississippi Burning, Medgar Evers, all of the civil rights action that had there. Even today, people tell me about certain parts of Mississippi that you really don't want to be in, especially after dark. Like, they're literally sundown towns. I may even do a video about that at a later date. But what do you think about this story? Because Miss Wade is just one of several family members who have found that their relatives have been buried in this grave behind the Hinds County Detention Center without family members being notified. And it was only because of the persistence of one mother, Miss Bettison Wade, in an attempt to find her son, Dexter Wade, that this story has come about. What do you think? How can this be explained? Where, authorities in Mississippi are just finding bodies, and there's no gruesome. There's no nothing that is more gruesome than the police officer saying that he ran over the man, and then instead of taking his body to the family that was identified in his wallet, he handed the body over to the coroner. They did what they did. They took him, threw him in a plastic bag, and put him in one of these unmarked graves. That is outright murder. The coroner should be charged with accessory to after the fact. Anybody else with knowledge should be charged with aiding, abetting, conspiracy, all of those things. But I just wanted to touch on this because this story, I don't know if you heard. Tell me if you heard about it in the comments. This story, I heard about it a couple of weeks ago, but there's no national attention concerning this, where over 200 bodies have been found in this grave site. A lot of the bodies died under mysterious circumstances, but also the family of these bodies were not notified. 919-587-7782 if you have any information on this or any other story that you might want to shed light on, feel free to call me. But peace and blessings to all. I'm out.